like I said, our discussion for tonight is a very special discussion. It's going to be on African Proverbs, hidden wisdom, and modern solutions. And as was already mentioned, we are joined today with David Roots TV and our dear friend Dr. David Roots. So again, we just want to welcome you. We are happy to share the platform with you, and we look forward to a very engaging discussion. So, a part of our conversation this evening, we want to connect it to some of the current events, and in particular, we know that in Bermuda, we've actually just been made aware that we've had an icon, a living icon, that's just recently transitioned and passed away. And before I give my little introduction to kind of set the stage, I want to go ahead and just acknowledge the passing of our Dr. Eva Hudson, and I just want to kind of put an African proverb that kind of comes to mind, one of the proverbs that comes to mind when I think of Dr. Hudson. And I just want to give each of you, let's say, maybe 3 minutes or so, just to kind of reflect on the proverb and how it kind of brings Dr. Hudson's legacy and memory to mind. So the African proverb says, though they refuse the advice of the old woman in the morning, they return to it in the evening. Though they refuse the advice of the old woman in the morning, they return to it in the evening. And so, again, putting you guys on the spot a little bit, but in reflection of Dr. Eva Hudson, what can we say in her memory? Keeping in mind those words.
Well, I will probably jump in first. I want to give thanks for having me on. Collaborating with David Roots TV. This is going to be an awesome discussion. And I want to say that our original discussion that I wanted to have with yourself and with Brother Eugene was around African Proverbs, hidden wisdom, modern solutions. But the importance or the occurrences of the day have necessitated, as you said, the remembrance and a probably somewhere along the lines, well, you're asking us to do it now, a reflection on one of our esteemed heroes to many, who has now been called to yonder transition, Dr. Eva Hudson. So I'll go first. Dr. Hudson was actually a cousin of mine on my grandfather's side, the Furbet Hudson clan. The interconnections, I will save that because I don't want to get anything wrong. But I've grown up all my life around not only Dr. Hudson, but all the Hudsons, including her, I guess that would be her brother, Dr. Arthur Hudson. So, sorry, Arthur Hudson. I said doctor, but Arthur Hudson, excuse me. So, when you talk about, I want you to restate your proverb again.
Sure. Though they refused the advice of the old woman in the morning, they returned to it in the evening.
Yeah, because when you were saying that, immediately I thought about a lot of the different articles that I was reading and different commentaries that I was reading from people who have now, underneath the commentaries that they were writing about her now that she's passed. That was one of the main things that they talked about. Okay, they talked about how Cousin Eva, not only she was a fierce communicator of her ideas in regards to race, racial disparity, and she rubbed people the wrong way on a lot of occasions, including those of people who we would call of European descent, white people, in particular in Bermuda. So the context is Bermuda because this will be going international. So we're talking about our little island of birth, Bermuda. But also a lot of people who were of the people that she tried to defend, which were black people, black Bermudians. She also seemed to get underneath their skin as well. And looking back, that was one of the main things that people seem to have, put out in terms of the remembrance of her. How a lot of the things she said, people often, in fact, some people use the word hated her. Some people didn't like her. I never saw that side, in regards to being around her. Every time I was around cousin Eva, um, the topics of race and politics and all that never came up. It was always just a smile. It was always just, "How are you, David? How's the family?" Little did I know that really, probably in my immaturity, I should have engaged a lot along the lines of her work. Luckily, and I'll close up because I don't want to take time away from Eugene. Luckily, in the household that I was raised under my mother, who is also a staunch defender of truth and rights in Bermuda, particularly for those people of African descent, aka black people, all of the literature, including Dr. Eva's book. So what's it called? Second class citizens, first class men. Okay, one of her most well-known books was on the library, as well as From Monk to Mazumbo. I think that's by Ira Phillip. All of those books were always around me. So I learned mostly about her opinions and the things that are her stance and her quest to communicate and educate from reading her books rather than from her herself. But as you said, now that she has transitioned, luckily, I noticed there have been some videos that have surfaced, and they did have like a celebration of her work and stuff previously. So in her lifetime, she was aware that people were very appreciative of the things that she has done. But as usual, with all of our elders and people that go forth, it's probably only in their passing that their importance will truly, truly be recognized and be able to be appreciated. And as you said, now that she's gone, that wisdom we'll probably all be looking towards, in particular in the light of the world events that's going on right now in May 31st, 2020. So I'll pass the mic to Brother Eugene. I hope he wrote down the proverb, so that he can remember.
No, you ain't gotta repeat it. You hear me?
He's a lawyer. He has his memory is probably much better than mine.
He must have said it at least 3 or 4 times. I don't know what I tend to repeat it. I listen intently. What I thought about the proverb, and let me just not give any anecdotal evidence or any anecdotal information about Dr. Hudson. I'm not qualified to do that. I was only in her presence a handful of times. And unlike David Roots, when I was in her presence, we talked about race. Or we talked about the political situation. So that my cousin, I wasn't close to her. There was no family events that I attended with her. But when we was close to each other and able to speak, whenever that happened, we spoke about race. Or we talked about the political situation. The proverb to me implies that a person can speak, an old woman, meaning a person who's had experience, a person who's lived life, a person that has much anecdotal evidence or anecdotal information to call upon when they're asked for information, can issue out advice that people who are younger and have less experience, for one reason or another, don't want to accept or appreciate. And the proverb speaks to the morning turning to evening before they return to the old woman's wisdom or advice. That means that over the course of time, the people who rejected the advice also experience more. And through experience, they come to see some of the things that the old woman advised them of, and if they accepted it in the morning, they might not have had to see. And what I get from the proverb is, much of the things that Dr. Hudson gave to us in books and speeches and in newspaper articles and letters to the editor, even though they were reviled by many, there will come a time, as the sun starts to go down in each of our lives, when we realize the sanctity or the wisdom or worth of some of the things she was saying, if not most of the things that she was saying. Now, one of the things that caught me about the proverb was when I first heard it, it said, return to the advice in the evening. And my lawyer mind said, that'll mean you accept it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you contrast with the morning's activities, reject it, it must mean that in the evening, you're primed through experience to appreciate and accept the wisdom that the old woman has given. And, like you said, Brother Roots, much of the things that you can turn your blind eye to or turn your head from without experience or might be discomforting to you, when you have an experience or two that make it necessary to push past your discomfort, you might turn back to the old woman who gave you the advice before you had the problem in the first place, or before you recognized the problem in the first place. So that's what it means to me. I hope I passed the test.
Mm-hmm. An early test.
An early test.
I mean, go ahead, Quinton.
The beauty. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say this when I had when I spoke about having this discussion around African proverbs. I knew that we will be in for some profound reasoning, because over the course of, since you've been in Ghana, you're residing right now in Ghana. Frequently you have used a lot of proverbs in your social media, okay? And for people that know you, you often communicate through the use of proverbs and regale us with, lots of wisdom, cryptic as it is, but lots of wisdom with the African proverbs. So you've started us right off from the beginning of the race with a stellar one, and hopefully you can give us your take on it.
Well, I mean, as is, there isn't too much, so to speak, to kind of add to what you guys have already said. But what my entry, that you made a point to say that through your relationship with the Dr. Roots, that you knew that she had a sense that she was appreciated. That you said that, she did have a sense that people appreciate the work that she had done and what she had been through. So the idea with the proverb, what it brings to mind to me, in particular in her passing, in particular at the age at which she had passed, and all that she has endured and been through, for me, it brings to mind a sense of perseverance that she embodies. Because she has been on this path, she has been fighting this journey for a very long time. And so for me, it is grateful, or it's refreshing to hear from someone who was close to her personally, to know that in spite of her struggles, in spite of it all, she within herself knew and felt that her work wasn't in vain. That even though, true say, in the morning, as Eugene puts it, her advice might have been rejected, but indeed, by the time evening came, people were coming to appreciate where she was coming from, and again, she was being given this new quote-unquote lease on life, so to speak, through the acceptance of her viewpoints and the acknowledgement of her input. So I give thanks for your reflections as well, to kind of bring it all together for me.
Could I ask before we go on, because you're going to share some more proverbs, but I was looking at I'm referring to my phone now. I was looking at I use the online etymological dictionary a lot in my, older age, to try to understand more the meaning of words and where they really come from, and what they truly mean. And I was looking up proverbs. In fact, I looked up parables first. And then I said, well, let me look up proverbs and what proverbs really mean. Okay? And so proverbs mean, it says here, in Old English comes from Old English word referring to speech, saying, to talk, to discuss, it literally means words put forward, okay, or forth. Pro as in forward, and verb as in word. So forward word, basically. That's what Proverbs, that's like the etymological meaning of it, forward word. You often give us Proverbs, but what's really in the African context, in the Ghanaian context, and particularly you might speak specifically from, do they actually use these forward words and forward phrases in modern day speech, and or is it just something we romanticize about Africa, and in terms of their usage and things like that?
All right, great question. Great lead into the introduction. So, yeah, man. So that was the warm-up exercise.
Okay.
As we say, tonight we want to discuss African proverbs, hidden wisdom, and modern solutions. Piggybacking off of what Dr. David Roots has said in terms of his research in terms of the roots of the word proverb. I went through a similar exercise, although I didn't go as deep as epistemological. I just asked my million of friends on Google. And when I asked a million of friends on Google, they said that a proverb is a short saying. Short saying, usually it even can be a familiar short saying that speaks a general truth or a bit of advice. This is how they describe it there. A general short saying that either states a general truth or a bit of advice. And what it brought to mind to me was the basic one of, look before you leap. A short thing that also states a bit of advice. This is how they define proverb. And they say that oftentimes proverbs appear or come across come as in the form of a metaphor. So again, the idea behind a proverb is that it's kind of it's a bit indirect, as opposed to how you're saying direct speech. The idea of a metaphor is that the meaning is a bit guised, the meaning is a bit disguised. And that, it oftentimes would also reflect the proverb would also reflect the customs, beliefs, or traditions and experiences of whatever people originated this particular proverb. So in the context of the conversation for this evening, where we want to talk about African proverbs, using the definition that I had came across, it'll say that, we're going to be talking about these familiar sayings that are thought to have originated somewhere on the continent of Africa. And that these sayings that entails some elements of a general truth or some type of, again, a bit of advice. Similarly, idea would be that these African proverbs would reflect the beliefs, the customs, and even the experiences of people on the African continent. And what we want to do for this conversation this evening is even broaden that lens to say that a lot of these African proverbs can be just as applicable to even be of the African diaspora. So again, for us to jump right back into it, and again to acknowledge the spirit of dearly departed Dr. Eva Hudson. Proverb that also comes to mind when you reflect on Dr. Eva Hudson. And this one you guys can speak to later after I finish. But the proverb is, until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always glorify the hunter. Until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always glorify the hunter. And again, as we reflect on Dr. Eva Hudson, to me, that in essence kind of epitomizes her work. You mentioned her book, Second Class Citizens, First Class Men. She also published a smaller book that I remember coming across and reading several times, called The Experience of Racism in Bermuda and Its Wider Context. And again, here are examples of Dr. Hudson being that lion. And again, in previous episodes, Eugene and I have talked about how people of African descent, we've been in a state of crisis. So again, the idea of telling the story of the hunt, Dr. Hudson understood also that we were in a state of crisis, and she was doing her part to try to tell our story from our perspective. Now, another thing that I just want to clarify around the idea of use of African proverbs, again, something that you hinted at, Dr. Roots, is that the ambiguity of African proverb is actually by intention. The idea is that one proverb can have multiple meanings, multiple explanations, and even multiple implications for one person. And then there's no grow when the proverb is presented to a group of people. For me, it's almost as if when you engage and ponder on African proverbs, to me it's almost as if it's a bit of an exercise in seeking out and finding your own truth. Because as it says, African proverbs kind of point you in a general direction, but then you have to ultimately chart your own course. You have to take your own initiative. And even in that, for me, also reflects certain underlying, beliefs of the community. That it's not so much for someone else to tell you directly what to do, but here's what you need within yourself. You should be able to find and discern and find your own way. So here's the interesting thing about Proverbs that Eugene also had brought up earlier, is that when we use Proverbs, as we know, you don't always have to follow the quote-unquote advice of the proverb. The proverb may say, look before you leap. You may just go ahead and keep on walking and not look. But the interesting thing is that, well, within this, I would like to say that the cool thing about Proverbs is that they do acknowledge your freedom. The use of African Proverbs also acknowledge your free will, your ability to make your own decision. The proverb is ignored, if indeed the wisdom and intention is in the proverb is ignored. Subsequently, when the lesson is learned, that's it. The lesson is still learned. And I think that was a point that Eugene had brought out a bit earlier. So, and to kind of hit home at what you were saying back in your earlier groups, was here in Ghana, when we talk about proverbs locally here on the ground, here in Ghana, I would say that as many different languages and as many different dialects that we have across the country, we similarly have that many different sets or groups of proverbs. Sure, there are going to be some proverbs that are going to kind of cross from one group to another, that are going to be kind of shared across ethnic groups. But what I've come to find is that at the local level, at the grassroots level, there is a wider variety, a wider array of proverbs that are used to govern and to guide even basic interactions, landlord to tenant, you know what I'm saying? There's somebody, the basic human interactions are governed by these proverbs. But this is experienced at the more grassroots, village level. Because what it brings to mind to me is one time having a conversation with a friend of mine who is in the Khan. I can't remember if he was telling me, explaining a situation to me, or if we were somewhere. But anyway, it got to a point where an elder had kind of said something, and I was saying, okay, so what did he say? He said, oh, no, he just said a proverb. Okay, so what did he say? Okay, he said a proverb. I know, but tell me the proverb. I can't really explain it in English. There's no explanation for what he said in English, but it's a proverb, and it's what we use to direct and govern our behaviors. So I say that to say, like you said, whatever, I'm posting a lot of proverbs on my social media and things of that nature. But truth be told, the ones that I can find, even with my millions of friends on Google, it can be said those are the commercial branches, the commercial proverbs, the ones that have been translated into English. But there's a whole other world, literally there's a whole other world of proverbs that exist at the local level, at the grassroots level. And from one language, from one ethnic group to another, those sets of proverbs also shift and change from, as we move to different groups. So in essence, what I want us to understand is that the working knowledge, when we talk about local, when we talk about really grassroots, and also understand that people in the quote-unquote village, rural areas that wear proverbs are a lot more than, let's say, the young people growing up in the city in Accra. So within the grassroots context, in essence, the working knowledge, understanding, and use of proverbs is basically an education in a traditional sense. An old man in my village, for example, who maybe cannot speak much English, probably didn't finish elementary or didn't finish middle school, however possesses a wealth of African proverbs. And he uses those proverbs in his council and as his position as an elder within the community. That person will be considered a wise man, and dare I say, an educated man. in spite of not having a quote-unquote formal education. But his knowledge of Proverbs, his ability to use Proverbs to help and guide people is the equivalence, in essence, of an education on the local and on the traditional context. So, as we also try to take this conversation and connect it to some of the events that are taking place in the U.S., particularly in response to the murder of George Floyd, the riots and the marches, and just as an aside, we're witnessing this, and now it seems as though social distancing is not so critical, or if it is a critical situation about the social distancing, then the U.S. might have a whole other matter coming their way in a short span of time. And that's not to say that I'm against the protesters, but putting it all into the context. We have to realize that in the American context, in the Black American context, even within our own context as people of African descent in Bermuda, we seem to be fighting these recurring battles. We seem to be facing these recurring situations that re-emerge from time and time again. And basically, what we do when we get enraged because of these recurring situations, we look around at times and look for places where we can sit in protest. We look for places where we can maybe march in defiance. Or we look for places where we can burn down in sheer frustration. But now, let's say we took this problem to the elder in the community, and we told them that we had this reoccurring problem. The Africans Americans, the Black Americans had this reoccurring problem with the criminal justice or the police force, and reoccurring being abused and murdered and things of this nature. The elders' response might be, in order to overcome this reoccurring situation, will be an African proverb like this: do not look where you fell, but look where you slipped. Do not look where you fell, but look where you slipped. So I'll close up there to let you guys kind of chime in if you want to touch on, about Dr. Eva Hudson again, until the story of the hunter stolen by the lion, or if you want to pick it up.
I'm going to jump in, but only to say that I'm monitoring the comments on the live, and I want to give thanks for the people that are watching. One of them, I believe, is your mother, Quinton, Miss Charlotte Sherlock. Is that correct? Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, Craig Luby, he says Dr. Eva never wavered from her message and has always stood firm in her stance to seek the advancement of all Black Bermudians and deliver change to the system of white supremacy in Bermuda, unlike many that used to be Black revolutionaries for Black Bermuda that have sought out to protect party politics in Bermuda. So that line you often hear a lot with Dr. Hudson, that she equally had chastisement for the party that many Black Bermudians support, the Progressive Labor Party. And then Jermaine Silver, the brother, says, R.I.P., rest in peace, Dr. Hudson. So people are tuning in, and I'd ask anyone who is tuning in to share the conversation so that we can get more viewers to check out the reasoning. So you were saying again that you'd like us to reflect. So I'm going to let Jean go and reflect. I've become a student. I'm not going to get caught out again. I've got my pen. I'm writing down the Proverbs now, okay? Because my memory, I'm got.
Elder holds thousands and thousands of Proverbs in the head.
That's right.
Below the gray hair, and you got a bold point out making.
Exactly. I'm already been caught wanting already, so
Right. No, I think what Quinton said was, don't look where you fell, but where you slipped.
Yes,
right?
And then the first one was, until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always be told by the hunter.
Right. Now, when I heard the second of the Proverbs, for the lion and the hunt, I thought of a third. It was when the lion roars, all other animals are quiet. Now, when I put the two together, which is something that people that use Proverbs sometimes do too, they have a succession of Proverbs that they respond to each other with in discourse. When I put the two Proverbs together, it would tell me that all that's required to be done for the story to be told in the way the lion wants the lion to tell it is for the lion to roar.
Hold on, Gene. Quinton, it says that what video is interrupted.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Even on Facebook, it says interrupted. He says our administrators are saying join.
You guys are good now, though. It's back up.
Okay.
The
All right.
stream just dropped. It must have been. It just dropped out, but the live stream's back up.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So what I was saying is, when I thought of the proverb about the hunt, the story of the hunt not being told accurately unless the lion gets to tell it, I paired it with another proverb that I remember when I heard it. That when the lion roars, all other animals are quiet. And it made me feel as if all that has to happen for the lion to have its story told the way the lion wants its story to be told is for it to roar.
Mm-hmm.
It's when the lion forgets to roar that all other animals chatter. And if we're the lion, and we are, but we forget that we're gonna roar, then even chipmunks and squirrels and gazelles can dictate, the story that we should be telling. So I think the proverb that Quinton used was used in relation to Dr. Hudson. But for me, it's even broader than that. It's the idea that we have a collective story that Dr. Hudson tried to tell, and tried to tell accurately from her vantage point. And then there were a lot of animals who tried to shut her up, and a lot of animals who were chattering, and who continue to chatter, and they will chatter. But they'll only chatter so long as the lion has lost its voice. When the lion decides to roar, they naturally keep quiet.
I think when the one you said about until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always be told by the hunter. Immediately what that brought to mind was what I was saying, that in the family, we looked at people like Dr. Hudson, even cousin Arthur Hudson, who has his own history in terms of being a Rhodes Scholar and, in terms of being in politics and all sorts of things that go along with that. My mother, for example, Miss Laverne Frebit, Dr. Bronze, also in my family, but on the other side. My point in saying all of that is that one of the challenges I think that we have is when you are in the families of these, people that will be looked at as great, surely if not in their own time, but on reflection in the future, that you don't see them as that lion, that you say unto the story of the hunt is told by the lion. You just see them as, part of the pride, whoa, lions. And so I'm just thinking about all her nieces and nephews and cousins, because there's a lot of us. Some of the pictures, as all our families are. All of the young people, I'm sure they're just like me. They probably have never heard her really sit down at a family gathering and actually regale us with some of the wisdom and some of the analysis. Even forget the wisdom. And as you said, the thing about people like Dr. Hudson is that she's from that generation before my mother and your mother. Quinton, I'm sorry, Eugene, I don't know your parents, but potentially your parents, but I know Quinton's mother. She is in that generation just before that one. So while my mother's experience of the civil rights movement was real and was on the ground, her experience of the segregation period would have been even more profound, Dr. Cousin Eva. And so she could have given us the anecdotal part, as Eugene was saying, like the stories and so on and so on. But even more powerfully, if she really wanted to, the whole family, the young ones in particular, could have, received a lot of the political science and the facts, because she always came with facts. My memory is not too good because it's filled with chemistry facts and getting ready for my chemistry lesson tomorrow. But her memory, despite, like you said, her age and all of that, was amazing. So in that way, I'm just trying to connect it to this. Until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, we really need to do more so that we can empower our elders to give these stories not just to the external world, but directly to the people probably that will be impacted by it the most, which is within the families, within the people itself. So that was something that really kind of jumped to mind when I thought about it. In fact, and I'll close with this before we move on to another proverb or to another part of the conversation. It was something that I thought about because one of my relatives, on me like putting some memorial information on my social media, said that it's too often that when people pass that we end up, championing them and remembering them and triumphing them and so on like that. And I said, it's true, we all know that, but what could be done about it? And immediately in my solution-based mind, I went to look and say, what we need to do, not just for me as myself and my family, but probably as a people, is have a period each year where we remember the elders that have passed, we celebrate the elders that are still with us, as well as we celebrate the newborns and new ones that have entered our family each year, because it's too long that people say that. When I believe you said one earlier, Quinton, about this, that no, this is that standard one when an elder dies, a library burns to the ground.
Library.
Yeah, so it's too many times we often hear that, while really the book should be kept current by the passing on. And I think that we really need to now, as individuals, as families, as a collective community, need to start to put something in place. The current holidays and all of the different things that we have now is not really sufficing to really get the richness of the story of the hunt being passed down by the lions. So I'll stop there because I don't want to go on too long with that. But that's actually a proposal. That's actually a national call. That's my Kwanzaa moment. Hopefully I can create something like Kwanzaa in regards to that.
So I think you bring up a valid point, Dr. Roots, because what you speak about is again something that I think Eugene and I try to touch on regularly on this platform, on this show. And that's the idea of, I don't want to say creating, but I think maybe a better way of saying it is recreating or even reclaiming our culture. Because, you even spoke to the idea about how the holidays that we are practicing now are not really meeting our needs. So again, it's about putting ourselves at the center and creating a culture, creating a system of interacting with ourselves that makes us the focus, which I think what you're saying in terms of picking a special time, one time of the year, where we reflect and appreciate the ancestors gone, the ancestors still with us, and the newborns. That's talking about recreating culture. And again, Eugene and I constantly have the conversation that indeed what we are engaged in here is cultural warfare. So like you say, it's a clarion call, a national call of yes, we need, if we want to go beyond the talking, it's about the action of recreating these cultures, of recreating our own culture. Like I said, that's a whole other conversation, because even this thing that we celebrate every August that we call Cup Match was something that quote unquote we created through our own wheel, through our own culture. But again, that becomes another conversation. But again, the proverb, until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always glorify the hunter. It is just that it's about resetting ourselves, repositioning ourselves, and understand that we need to be the focal point, we need to be the center point of our existence in order to know ourselves better, and then also in order to engage with the world and in order to engage with others better in a respectful manner. And again, in honor of Dr. Eva Hudson, I'd like to say that I think that a large part of her works was dedicated to that very thing, of trying her best to be that lion, to tell our story from our perspective. So if you want to just go ahead and shift a little bit and shift gears, because like we said, Dr. Eva Hudson spent her whole life fighting for justice and fighting for equality. And one thing that we're all witnessing now particularly in the U.S., is the breakdown of the guise of peace. Let me say it like that, with the staging of many protests and quote-unquote riots and whatnot, as a result of this most recent murder of an unarmed black man of African descent, Mr. George Floyd. And you guys can comment on it in general, but again, the African proverb that kind of comes to mind, particularly in the context that these types of situations are recurring. And again, even within the Bermuda context, we have similar situations based around race, based around white supremacy and a lack of our own power that reoccur, that rear their head from time to time. We make fuss and then it goes away. Then a few years later, another incident rears its head. We make fuss and it goes away. So the proverb is, don't look where you fell, but look where you slipped.
Before you any comment about before you don't look where you fell, look where you slipped. It's funny how Proverbs make you should contemplate that you have more thoughts. And when I was thinking when you was transitioning to this the current events in the U.S. and whatever, and coming to Bermuda, I was thinking this. Since when, think of a lion and think of a hunter. Which is the more dangerous animal in the savannah? And when did lions lose their teeth? Because depending on the circumstance, the lion can be the hunter. There is something that changes the dynamic between the man that hunts the lion and the hunter and the lion that hunts the lion that's hunted. That dynamic changes entirely when the lion sees itself in a different light. And we normally think of ourselves as the supreme hunter. But what animal hunts better than a lion or a pride of lions?
Mm.
That's what I was thinking when we transitioned. Wait a minute, have lions lost their teeth? Have lions lost the ability to roar? Because and should lions be telling the stories? Or should they just do what lions do? It made me wonder. But in any case, you roots on the other proverb.
Well, I mean, you're kind of giving rise to what Quinton said in the beginning, where Proverbs have their own way of bringing out meaning upon meaning and unfolding. As he said from my notes that I wrote down, he talked about a belief, custom, and advice. A proverb normally is based around some sort of belief and custom, and they normally give some advice. So in the unfolding of it, as you said, the advice will apply differently depending on the person who's interpreting it and their need for it. Hence why I use the word parable at first. When parables are probably best known when we talk about biblical parables, but we know that, I recently got accused on social media. Somebody asked me, why do I keep quoting parables from the Bible and not quoting sources? And actually, I hadn't even quoted a parable from the Bible. I had quoted something from Eastern mysticism. And in reality, it wasn't even from Eastern mysticism. It was just something I observed. It's like you saying, what goes up must come down. And a brother said, well, why are you quoting the Bible? And I was like, well, really I wasn't. But it shows the power of the words and of the reasoning. So this one, do not look where you fell, but look where you slip.
Yeah, man.
Look where you slip. Well, we're having a good conversation. So when I think about that, for some reason, I start thinking about Admiralty House. I start thinking about Admiralty House. Now, for those international listeners that are not aware of that, Admiralty House is a place where people in Bermuda, where we were born, go to swim, and a lot of the swimming involves climbing up cliffs, climbing up rocks, and jumping off those rocks, which can be quite high, in different stages, as we know. And one of the chief things is don't slip. Make sure you don't slip. So do not look where you fell, but look where you slip. And over time, as we know, as you go up those different paths, you start to get an idea of where it's slippery and where isn't. That's the wisdom. When you bring a tourist there, so for example, I brought my wife to Bermuda some years ago, and I said, you know, as a rite of passage, you got to go up the cliff and jump off. And she was quite concerned. Whereas to us, it was like, no, you know, you just go up the path. Even if you don't go and jump, you still got to go and look. So I guess a big part of this proverb is that whole having an understanding through experience of the slippery parts, you know, having the wisdom. I would translate this in particular in a Bermudian context, and we don't really have time to get into it, but another way of looking at this is to use the word militancy. Okay, so militancy would be the contradiction to not being aware of where you will slip, whereas the militant one is aware of those places that are slippery. And so that's not to say they won't go there, but they're going to be very prepared. And we can look at these incidents in America, in the USA, in light of that it's either people are not realizing that there are slippery areas that they keep going into, and that either they should avoid those areas or come with better footwear, or something else, you know, is going on, because we keep falling, you know. And we want to say rest in peace to the brother, George Floyd is his name. Is it George Floyd? Rest in peace. Yeah. People are talking about him now, but on a serious note, many keep falling to the ground and they're not getting back up. So that proverb is very powerful in terms of the depths that you can and the heights that you can really take it. We need to understand those slippery parts, and we either need to change the footwear, change the path, or something needs to go on. It's a very powerful proverb, that one.
To piggyback on your point there, Dr. Roots. So what I'm hearing you say is that the idea of don't look where you fell, look where you slipped for yourself, is telling you, it's speaking to you in the sense of knowing how to navigate a path, knowing how to negotiate your way through. And again, when we talk about, in particular, an instance that took place in the U.S., you know, it's about maybe knowing how to navigate that path in terms of interacting with the police. Because what I have noticed, I've seen a few little videos come across on certain social media sites where you see parents now sitting down with their young black children and having conversations about, okay, make sure always your hands are visible. Make sure you tell the officer this, or, you know, so now in light of this, now they're trying to look for those slippery spots and having these meetings with their young people so that maybe it can offset some of these, you know, unnecessary and unjust killings. So yeah, man, I take your point. Eugene?
Well, I tend to think in like two ways. The first is, in order for someone who has slipped and fell to take the advice in the proverb, the fall could not have killed him. I know that's a strange thing to think, but once you're not in control of your body, and the air and the ground has control, you could be really injured. You could be mangled. You could be killed. If you trip good enough, you could be killed. So the advice is for those who slipped but still live and can take the path again. That's a very important thing. If you're not dead after you die, it means you have enough resilience. You had enough resilience to withstand the fall the first time. Now you don't want to keep putting your body through the same trauma. You don't want to keep putting yourself at the risk of the fates. You want to be more deliberate. And so the proverb to me talk about slippery paths and whatnot. It's about limitations and recognize your limitations. Like there are things that you might think you can do, but you can't. Like if you want to run through a forest that's full of vines and creepers, you might end up falling. We have limitations, and we should recognize those limitations and make allowances for them. That's why when Dr. Root says, if it's slippery, wear some different type of shoes. You can't assume that your feet, which are made for a certain type of traction, are going to withstand ice and and any type of slippery thing, you got to make allowances. So you obviously don't look at the place where you fell. Where you fell is a result of fate, not deliberate action. It's a result of fate. You have to look where you slipped because that's when you lost control. And you might have lost control hundreds. You might have lost control hundreds, if not thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you're going to take the path again, and you deal with the same, and you're navigating the same terrain, you might have to look at that terrain with a special closeness.
Yeah.
Now, to me, that terrain could be white people.
Mm-hmm.
They could be the jungle. They could be the vine creatures.
Mm.
And therefore, it is going to deal with them as if the land is flat and easy to navigate. You might not be recognizing your own limitation, and you might also not be recognizing the state of the terrain or the lay of the land.
Mm.
So the proverb says, "No." It's almost like saying, "Know your enemy," or you know, take a special care where you're walking, because some people and some terrains is not comfortable for a man like us.
Well, you said.
Guys, keep good.
Well, yeah. You said, Gene, that you mentioned vines and creepers.
Uh-huh.
The proverb says, "Do not look where you fell, but look where you slipped, not where you
Uh-huh.
tripped." Okay.
Not where you tripped.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, nevertheless,
I've heard it that way too, buddy, mate. I've heard it that way too. I've heard it that way too.
Okay, exactly. But
Trip and slip.
nevertheless,
Wait,
nevertheless, I think a third part of it would be, do not look where you fell, but look where you slipped, and then consider who tripped you up, or who made it slippery.
Who pushed you? Yeah.
Yeah, or who pushed you, or so on and so on. And that's the probably the deeper part of it in relating it to today's conversation, because on two parts you have Dr. Hudson, who was trying in herself, in her wisdom, in her vocation, to tell us not only where we were slipping, but also who was making it slippery for us. You know, and when you read and you listen to some of her own words, which I did today on some of the video interviews she did, and one thing I want to say is that to understand the power of what she was doing, I just went to the Royal Gazette, to the desktop site, and put her name in the search bar, and so many articles, not articles, but references came up, letters to the editors, opinions, other articles, cross links to her somehow, some way, so on and so on. So she was doing her best to try to not only tell us why it was slippery, but also who was making it slippery and who was tripping us up. And in reference, and this, as you said, Quinton, in our previous conversation in preparation for this show, it relates directly to the United States incidences today, because a lot of the issues of why it's slippery are just on a what we see as a micro scale in Bermuda, which is not really a micro scale, but is also on a macro scale in the U.S. I will say to finish with that one is that I was watching a video. My good brother, Mark Bean, sent me a video in response to the brother in the U.S. passing from Dr. Claude Anderson. And Dr. Claude Anderson, although the video was done previous to this, it was very applicable to today. Basically, what he was trying to say, Dr. Claude Anderson, was that, as we all have heard from all of the rioting and all of the protests and all of that, you may accomplish some short-term gratification from it, but ultimately the conditions that have made it slippery, that have made it trippy, are not going to be removed until the real foundation, which for him is economics, is changed. And so that proverb we were saying while you were going, Quinton, was that it has probably another part, which is do not look where you fell, but look where you slip, but also who's made it slippery for you. you know, and what conditions have made it slippery
Right.
for you, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that you'll be able to rectify things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But I
stop
mean,
focusing. Stop focusing on your present condition, which might be on the ground after you slipped. Look at where you went wrong. Right. Sorry, Quinton.
you are you over here? Are you here reading? I'm writing very messy, so nobody can cheat off my paper.
No.
So no, but I mean, you strike on a lot of points that I also had in mind to talk about in reference to this proverb. Do not look where you fell, look where you slipped. And again, connecting it to the experience of the fallout from the murder of the brother George Floyd. You bring up a good point when you talk about the idea of loss of control. When I think about where you fell versus when you slipped, when you focus in on where you slip, that means you're focusing in on where you begin to lose control. And then you assess your situation, you try to address your problem at that point, from that point of reference, from where you lost control. Now again, the interesting thing about this, even when we bring this conversation, really dial it in, this idea, let's bring it much more practical and make it a little bit more concrete, the discussion. There can be debates about when we lost control. Some people can say that we as people of African descent lost control when they started to load us onto those quote-unquote slave ships and started transports across the Atlantic. So therefore, the place where we slipped was on the continent, and we need to look at our problem from that standpoint and get back to that foundation in order to address our problem, because that's where we slipped. There are some that are maybe of the mindset of it really brings me to mind in some of my brothers I went to university with in the U.S. that maybe we slipped. We kind of slipped when we took on to that thing about integration, because if you look at post the quote unquote slavery era and when it was legally forced segregation, there were indeed thriving black communities. There were thriving black economies. I mean, we know the stories about Oklahoma, the Wall Street in Tulsa, the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, and other thriving black communities that existed pre-integration. So some people may say, well, we slipped there, so don't come to me back to Africa stuff. We worked and struggled for this America. We worked and struggled for this place in the West, so I'm not going back to Africa. So, when we talk about where we slipped, there can be divergent points, but I think when we talk about us as a collective people, part of our puzzle is trying to find out how can we even with those two entities, even with those two viewpoints, how can we understand that irrespective of where you think we slipped, on the continent or in the quote-unquote new world, that the enemy or those that made this world slippery remain the same. And therefore, we can address our problem collectively so that the ground is no longer slippery. Whether you want to remain on that side and continue the works that have been set in place for the last 400 or 500 years there, or if your vision or your ideation is for you to maybe return to the continent of Africa and try to rectify things from that perspective. So again, how can we bring these viewpoints together so that, again, the other point you also rise is that so that we do not simply get up off the ground from we have fallen, look around, and think that these contemporary issues that we face in this present moment are the direct cause of us on the ground, and not taking the more wider perspective. And again, if I just say the African perspective, where it knows that there's a much longer story to be told in order to understand even the present day. I'll stop there.
It's interesting that you said that, and I want another proverb before we come off. So I hope you got one more for us. But when I went to university, my first university experience, I went to Hampton University in Virginia, and I have been abroad to the U.S. Before that, had the fortune to go abroad. But being in university, is a great experience. You're all on your own, so on and so on. So you coming from Bermuda, and in Virginia during the winter time, you know, it can get very cold. So things can freeze. So I remember my first experience with ice. Okay, it wasn't black ice, so it wasn't ice that you couldn't see. It was just like a frozen puddle. And I also remember, you know, part of my degree is marine and environmental science. So I used to do a lot of diving. So I had a nice dive watch that my mother had purchased for me to like aid my studies and all of that. Okay. And so I had my watch on, probably had my Timberland boots on at that time. And, you know, it was evening time. Actually, it was during the daytime. And so I was walking and I saw this frozen puddle. And the ice just looked so clear and just beautiful, like, you know. And so I went and said within myself, like, I want to go and walk on this ice. Like, it just attracted me. And as soon as I put my foot down, for most of us, you know, that know about ice, as soon as you didn't even have a chance, it's not even you had a chance to go, oh, it's slippery. As soon as you put your foot down, because you're transferring your weight on your leading foot, boom, I just went forward. You know, the thing about ice is it takes your feet from underneath you. So you fall backwards. Huh?
You think you think about whites?
No, ice.
I
Exactly. So, and when I fell, my new watch, the wristband broke, so on and so on. So why I get that little story is that sometimes possibly, one, you don't know the conditions that have made you slip until you slip, because you're in a new environment. You know, you've been thrust into this new environment and you're trying to use old techniques and your old sort of movements in this new environment, and really that's not the way that it should work. And two, possibly if you don't experience that fall, then you'll never know to look back and say, because now I know, you know, I live in England, stuff like that, I live in London. I know whenever I see a puddle, I might be with my children and it's frozen, I know to tell them, don't walk on that. You're not even have to experience. You don't even have to learn from the experience. You're going to learn from me. I'm telling you now, don't walk on it. Trust me. You know what I mean? So that also is a way to think about there's reasonings about we have been thrust into a lot of situations where we are not actually aware of the conditions that that could cause you to slip. But now I think it's time that we need to be a bit more aware, because we've slipped far too many times.
Yes, I. Yeah, Mark.
Quinton.
Yeah, I think we have about like 9 more minutes, Eugene. So I don't know if you want to.
Do you have another proverb for us?
Man, you live in a place where there's 1,000 proverbs, and you're telling me like you live in a place with thousands of proverbs around your head every day, and you're telling me that 9 minutes you can't pull out one, you can't extract. Yeah, give us one.
Well, I mean, the one that I liked was one I just used. I don't know if it's cheating,
What's that?
but it goes like this. How's it go, Quinton?
I've got my pen, so don't worry. My pen's ready.
It says, the worlds of the elders do not lock all of the doors. They leave the right door open. The worlds of the elders do not lock all of the doors. They leave the right door open. God of mercy.
Did you say the words or the worlds?
The
Worlds, worlds, the worlds of the elders do not lock all the doors. They leave the right door open. I don't see you writing, Eugene.
I'm not going to. I got it.
But yeah, but I mean, okay, so real fast, like I said, we all on a short time span. You know, the idea for me, I'll go first this time, is that indeed, you know, from the African perspective, you know, we believe that, you know, death isn't the end of it. You know, and we also believe that those that have the experience, those that we consider elders, do carry a lot of wisdom and knowledge that we can learn from. And basically, to me, I think one of the things I gained from this proverb is to be optimistic. You know, that in spite of, you know, there is still going to be a way, because again, one of the ideas is that the ancestors and the elders do help to guide us, help to lead us the way. And as the proverb says, there will be the right door will be left open. So in spite of it all, you know, there's this optimism that we will win the fight, we will win the battle, and that as long as we persevere, and even like we had already mentioned in reference to Dr. Eva Hudson about the perseverance, that we'll find our way, and indeed in time, you know, we'll be able to overcome.
I'm gonna jump in quick, because when you said that, immediately I thought about myself as a parent. And I thought about, because in my household, I'm the elder. And I thought about the fact that there are some places that the children are told not to go. Now, I don't have any locked doors per se, but because my house just ain't big enough. But if I did have a big house with lots of different things and stuff like that, some of the doors would be locked. My words do enough to lock the doors, like don't go in that room, you're not supposed to be in that room. But then there's other rooms that they're free to go into, like like in the living room, stuff like that. So, you know, that's a powerful one too, in the sense of as elders, as parents, as teachers, we tend to close certain doors, not because we don't want the people, the youths or whoever it is, to take the instruction not to go there, but really what they need is probably in a different door at that different time. And one of the key things that Dr. Hudson, from her own mouth, in her this video that she recently done, someone did a video for to kind of talk about her life's work, and they asked her, what lessons does history teach us? And her words were that she doesn't think that history teaches us anything. What she said was she doesn't think history teaches anything, is that each generation has to learn it for themselves. And I think that links to what you're saying, that you know, there are many doors, but it's up for us in each generation. We're going to have to learn these lessons for ourselves. There are certain doors that have been left open by elders, but we still have to learn them for ourselves.
When I listened to the proverb, I thought of another two. This one is just like a triangle. It says the key that locks is also the key that opens. So anybody who can lock a door and lock it can also open it. So the right door must be the door that opens in the moment that you need it to open. It's not a fixed door. When I thought of the proverb, it's not a fixed door. It's not like you have three options and two are bad, and you only can go in this third one. If you go in the first of the two, then you're in the wrong door. The proverb makes me think that all of those doors may be the right door at the right time. You just need to understand the worlds of the elders or the ancestors. And what you said, Quinton, I thought was intriguing too. The idea that we are our ancestors and we are the direct line of our ancestors. And if you think about the divine nature of that, there are many children, you can say, or many offspring that just never come to be. We've all, I don't know if I'm somewhat vulgar, but we've all performed the act that produces children, and we perform the act far more than we have children. And many of those offspring, potential offspring, we either, you know, we don't have. But the ones we do have may very well be the right door. They come from us. It's a combination of the two perspectives you two had, and my thought about the proverb about locking doors in the first place. The door, yeah, that's what I think. I don't.
Yeah.
I swear, if I thought about it, I'll get more renditions tomorrow. I'll still be turning up different meanings tomorrow and the day after. But that's what it means at the moment.
So, I mean, I think that, you know, it's been a wonderful discussion, a wonderful reason to brought us this evening. Again, you know, we want to give thanks to Dr. David Roots and David Roots TV for sharing the platform with Eugene and myself. And again, the message for tonight in particular is one, just a reverence and respect and honor to Dr. Eva Hudson. And, as you had just quoted Dr. Roots, that where she says that, it's not so much that history teaches anything, but it's up to each generation to take up its own fight for freedom. With her passing, I mean, there's no more of a sign that we must need, particularly of people of African descent who are connected to Bermuda, to know that indeed this is a new day, this is a new dawn, and now it is literally up to us to carry on the legacy of Dr. Eva Hudson and carry it forward as we see best, and likewise so that in our efforts locally and then even in efforts internationally, we can hopefully begin to see a reduction in the incidents as we are witnessing in the U.S. And like we're saying in tonight's discussion, is that may come about if we can shift our focus on where we slip and begin to address where we're slipping, as opposed to placing our emphasis on the present contacts that we may see around us once we're picking ourselves up from off the ground. So, gentlemen, brothers, if you have anything else, any final words that you may want, then we'll send it back over to Fresh.
Until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, it will always be told by the hunter. So, thank you to the Lions for allowing David Roots TV to be part of the story. Much more to come.
Yes.
Fire, 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 fire.